Ladies and gentlemen, if you have been wondering what exciting action is going to happen in these chairs, the time has come. We are going to be welcoming the WBAF Ministerial Roundtable. The topic today is developing an international dialogue between global leaders of public and private stakeholders to play a role in the G20 agenda for the global partnership of financial inclusion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, investing globally provides huge opportunities. But before investing, one needs extensive knowledge about the ecosystem. The post-digital revolution world will be informed by decisions made today, and the leaders of global ecosystems are authorized to drive this revolution on behalf of their community. With this in mind, as an affiliated partner of the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, the World Business Angels Investment Forum is hosting this roundtable as a global convergence of global leaders of early and post-early stage equity and capital markets to discuss in detail the G20's agenda to increase financial inclusion in the world. This WBAF Ministerial Roundtable is bringing together government ministers from various countries, angel investors, policymakers, and representatives of innovation and science parks, chambers of commerce and industry, and government investment promotion agencies. The discussants, prominent global leaders of the world's investment value chain, will explain how they plan to encourage collaboration between the ecosystems they lead. They will also explore ways to develop an international dialogue between public and private institutions that will empower early and post-early stage equity markets in response to the worldwide digital transformation. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, with a star-studded panel like we are bringing to you today, we did an absolutely dynamite moderator to lead the proceedings, and we have that dynamite moderator. This is Mehmet Şimşek, the former Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Turkey. Please come and join us and command our panel today. A longtime friend and supporter of the WBAF, thank you for coming. There we go. Thank you. And if I could ask to take their seats, His Excellency Alhaji Mohammed Ibrahim Awal, the Business Development Minister from the Republic of Ghana, once again to take the stage. His Excellency Besim Bekaj, the Minister of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for the Republic of Kosovo, yet again, thank you. We would like to welcome His Excellency Zoran Sapurek, the Minister in charge of regulations for the Republic of Macedonia. Thank you. Once again, we would like to welcome Baybars Altuntas, Chair of the World Business Angel Investment Forum. Longtime friend of the forum, Peter Cowley, President of the European Trade Association of Business Angels, known as EBAN. Peter, welcome back. We would like to welcome Matthew Gamser, the Chief Executive Officer of the SME Finance Forum of the IFC and World Bank Group, all the way from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us today. Dr. Hashim Hussain, the head of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. If you could please join us. Thank you. Or not, if we have a little miss. And Abdul Malak Al-Jabbar, President of the Middle East Trade Association for Business Angels. Thank you very much for joining us. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, your WBAF Ministerial Roundtable. Mr. Şimşek, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ministerial Roundtable. I'm delighted to be moderating this great panel. I have three ministers with a strong focus on development, entrepreneurship, business investments. But I also have today amazing panelists with a very strong background in angel investment, but also in general SME development, entrepreneurship, and investments in general. This is a very large panel, as you can see. And therefore, if I may, I'd like to skip lengthy introduction of the panelists because we have very limited time, and I'm sure the audience is probably holding a program guide which includes lengthier bios, but if you're really interested, you can Google everyone. So before I begin, please let's give a warm welcome to the distinguished panelists. Thank you. Well, our topic is financial inclusion. And as you may know, while financial inclusion is on the rise, we still have, according to the latest report, which is 2017 Global Findex database, it shows that 1.7 billion people worldwide remain unbanked. Now, almost all of these unbanked people or adults are actually in developing economies, and majority of unbanked adults are women. So this is a very important issue, and that's why it's on G20's agenda. When Turkey was holding G20 presidency, we had identified our agenda as 3 I's. And one of them was inclusiveness, investments, and implementation. We know that angel investment is one form of equity financing. And considering the high level of leverage globally, if you look at the world today and just look at non-financial corporations, their debt has risen from about $20 trillion roughly in late 1990s, 1997, to over $70 trillion today. So the world is awash with debt, and I think finding investors that will provide equity financing as opposed to debt is going to be critical going forward. While debt brings forward consumption today, clearly it also means, if it is excessive, stagnation in the long run. Well, that's my introduction. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to straight go into my first question. Mr. Baybars Altuntaş, who is the chairman of World Business Investment Forum, you are our host. So let me begin a simple question. Why are we discussing financial inclusion at a World Business Angels Forum, Investment Forum? If you could tell us the connection, please.
I love the question very much, Mr. Minister, because I know the answer. Thank you very much. Mr. Minister, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for accepting the moderation of this panel, because you are a minister who led the economy of the 17th biggest economy of the world, Turkey, for non-stop 11 years. So please, let's give a big applause to Mr. Minister. And I know that this is maybe the only panel you are joining, maybe in the last, isn't it? So thank you very much for, again, accepting this moderation. It is a great honor to be moderated by you. Let's come to your question. Governments in the world generally support entrepreneurs by putting public finance to their businesses directly. Supporting entrepreneurs is the general policy of governments because entrepreneurs are important and they want to find a way to support them because they are creating new jobs. But World Business Angels Investment Forum is not on the same page in this policy. We are advocating another strategy. Instead of supporting entrepreneurs directly, maybe it is a smarter idea to support the supporters of entrepreneurs. Why? Because entrepreneurs of today need more than finance to compete in global markets. When we see the financial roadmap of an entrepreneur, we can see some financial instruments everywhere in the world. Crowdfunding platforms, banks, VCs, stock exchanges, angel investors, bootstrappers, government grants. These are the main instruments available for startups. But one of them is different than the others. Angel investors. Because they are putting more than finance. They are taking risk, acting together with startups, and they are believing in the dreams of startups, not in Excel sheets provided to them, which shows only the last 3 years or 2 years performance. They are investing in the future of dream, not the past performance. So we wanted to include as the board this panel as the first panel of our Congress, because in order to create a better flow of finance for entrepreneurs, smart finance, it is very important to create a global awareness about the importance of angel investors. And you are the one who catched this many years ago, and you are the one who brought the angel law to Turkey with 75% highest tax incentive in the world. And you are the one who also brought the crowdfunding law to financial roadmap of entrepreneurs in Turkey. And I know that Macedonian government is now studying the same law, translated into from Turkish to Macedonian language. So North Macedonian language, sorry. And this is Macedonian. Okay, okay. I completely agree with you. And so this panel discussion is an introduction to create an awareness at the policy level, how supporters of entrepreneurs can be supported through tax incentives, angel law, etc. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baybars Altuntaş. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. Let me turn to Matthew Gamser, who is the CEO of SME Finance Forum, today representing IFC World Bank. Why inclusion is so important for G20? I mean, how government should develop a good ecosystem, in your view, in terms of funding, second, and improving, the support for SMEs in general?
So thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. When the G20 was formed, it was in the teeth of the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. And at that time, they brought together a number of people that really had good experience in the field of financial sector development. And they made the point at that time, which is still just as true today, that if the primary interest is in a stable financial system, we can't have that without an inclusive financial system. So right from the start, inclusion and stability have had to go hand in hand. And as has been talked about today, we still have a long ways to go. And if we look at the enterprise statistics, and just the small enterprise, the SME statistics, we can still measure, as we have in the World Bank Group, a gap that's in excess of $5 trillion in emerging markets only on the debt side, or and you would add to that if you added the informal sector, because that's only based on data and modeling from formal sector companies. You can add to that underservice, such as the many times that trillions of dollars that are tied up in trade and supply chain financing systems where it's the small businesses that are bearing the brunt of this, because the bigger businesses have ways of hedging and getting money and getting liquidity, but the small businesses are the ones that are waiting on the bigger businesses. So there's a lot that could be done. And at the same time, while we need many types of financial institutions, but we need angels in particular, because as you heard, The angels are the ones that are focusing on a certain type of startup business that is growing faster, creating a disproportionate amount of the revenue, and also, in our World Bank statistics, the jobs. So this is, inclusion is very important. All sorts of financial institutions are important to this. We need to do a heck of a lot better job of being inclusive in the financial sector. But angels, from the standpoint of SME finance, which is my focus, are a particularly important group.
Thank you. I think to reduce global inequality and poverty, inclusion also is key. And as you've highlighted, stability of the financial system certainly would be strengthened through further inclusion. Let me go to Mr. Abdul Malik Al-Jabbar, who is the president of Middle East Trade Association for Business Angels. You are an experienced angel investor with, as far as I know, more than 25 personal angel investments and 70 investments through angel funds. What is the main challenge in increasing angel investments in general, but also in particular in Middle East? Clearly, demographics are quite favorable in the Middle East. You have already a relatively high youth unemployment. So in my view, this will be a critical issue. What role should governments play, if any? I mean, do you see role of government beyond enabler, or is it purely that? Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Obviously, governments can and should play a critical role in having a vibrant, sustainable ecosystem for entrepreneurs, for startups. And that, if I focus on the Middle East, requires reforms, serious reforms in the fiscal policies, the legal framework of companies, company registrations. And these are two critical factors, because right now, today, there are no special regimes that makes the life of entrepreneurs or angel investors easy and dynamic and fluid. To the contrary, there is no differentiation between a startup, and I always mention in my discussions with the government, if I open a falafel shop or a startup, I go exactly through the same process, and doesn't make sense, because these are two different things. Falafel shop is important, definitely, but an IT company or an e-commerce or a cloud artificial intelligence startup is totally different animal that requires different kind of attention. At the same time, the legal framework for recognizing angel investors, some countries like Turkey did, so recognizing angel investors, creating a framework to allow the registration of angel syndicates that does not exist, that requires also some reforms. And also, we all talk about the Death Valley, and usually the percentage of startups that will make it, and the maximum is 10%. So 90% will die. It's a nightmare to go to the company registrar and dissolve a company after it fails, and this happens frequently. Right now, we have some startups that we've been fighting for 5-10 years to convince the company registrar why it failed and just write it off. Lastly, and this is extremely important, the life of entrepreneurship is based on disruption. And governments need to open up. When you come up with disruptive ideas, especially in the social economy, and with a more focus in the financial sector, usually government is very rigid and extremely conservative when it comes to opening up to these kind of disruptive ideas. And I think governments needs to open up and allow these kind of disruptive models to be introduced in their home countries, because some of these disruptive ideas have only to try and sell their services way far away from their home markets, and that's difficult. So I think the best thing governments can do is open up for these disruptive innovative ideas that are mainly in the financial and e-commerce platforms.
Thank you. If I may, I'd like to introduce Peter Cole. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
You are the president of European Trade Association of Business Angels. You are actually, everybody knows you as a star angel investor.
That's unfair.
Amazing track record. Now here today, you represent IBAN. But of course, you're here also as an entrepreneur, an angel investor in the UK. Now, as far as I know, UK is way ahead of the curve. It was the pioneer. So if you could tell us, tell us why UK is so successful. For example, why Luxembourg, or any other European countries have not managed, or replicate the success of the UK. What makes UK so different than others?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mehmet. Can I just say, first of all, that I'm somewhat disappointed, and sorry, Baybars, that we're all male on this panel. It's really somewhat unfair, based on the fact that financial inclusion is the female population generally is the big issue around the world. Anyway, having got that out of the way, unfortunately I'm 11% of the problem here, but I will answer your question. So why has the UK been most successful? And it's not the most successful. Silicon Valley clearly is by a large amount. Tel Aviv has done very well as well, and the whole of Israel, etc. But the UK, it's partly because of tax incentives. There's a lot of envy about the tax incentives that were introduced for angels. Back in 1983, we're in our 36th year of this, where high net worth individuals, the people you wouldn't normally expect to provide tax incentives to, have got those incentives, which then facilitates the investment in early stage companies because the taxpayer, through tax reliefs, is giving a proportion of that. So that has been going on 36 years. Secondly, the UK has been, probably not any longer, an early adopter of digital technology. So companies, as we know, product companies scale better, definitely than service companies, as Hans said earlier on, and that if the local market is the first market to get into, which it generally is, then we've adopted as a nation early technologies, apps, etc., technology. Thirdly, of course, we speak English as a mother language, which, although this conference is in English and people's English on this panel and everywhere else is excellent, has helped because generally scaling technology companies globally does require the English language, particularly for one that's entering the US market. And then, of course, for the reasons you mentioned Luxembourg, this is an email we swapped overnight, and because somebody asked me about Luxembourg recently, the last few days, we've got scale. And once scale is created, it continues. So we have scale because we have entrepreneurs that have been successful and been unsuccessful. And personally, my criteria for investing are on my website, and I'd much rather invest in an unsuccessful entrepreneur than one that hasn't done it before, because they will have made some mistakes. So we built up that scale in there. So it's a combination of the smartness of those entrepreneurs, both reinvesting and helping the entrepreneurs, the tax reliefs, which other countries are introducing, of course, and the fact that we started early on this journey. So it does give us a rather favorable position, but we are doing our best. Trust me, that's why I'm president of IBAN, to spread the experience that I've made and the UK have got around Europe.
Well, we have, Peter, before I move on, we have a number of ministers on this panel, and I'm sure they would like to get your insights in terms of government intervention. You did this, as an entrepreneur, but also you've researched what works and what doesn't. Other than incentives and, ecosystem.
Yeah,
is there anything else that you would provide?
What one must be cautious of is using government money as equity, because that can crowd out, that can exclude the smart money, the people who come in and can add some value. Not suggesting that government doesn't add value, but there's a very different sort of value added by somebody who's been on an entrepreneurial journey, as you will know in the audience. So money coming in from government is good in terms of grants, but you've got to be more cautious if he's giving in terms of equity. So that's the first point. Second point, in terms of tax reliefs for angel investors. Difficult to do if one's a socialist nation, because like France, for instance, because it doesn't seem quite right. But at the same time, that does leverage the amount of capital going in. Tax relief potentially on exits as well. Exits not just for the investors, but also the entrepreneurs. But most important of all, I think a regulatory framework which makes easy to set up business, as was said at the end of the panel here, and run a business. So the intellectual property, the way of setting the business up, the taxation system, etc. That's really difficult to change. And I know Croatia has done quite a lot of that, and I'll only pick that out because of Kalinda was on stage earlier on. So there are a number of things the government can do. All take time. They've got to be started somewhere. We started a very long time ago.
Thank you. Before I give the floor to ministers, we have another speaker, Dr. Hashim Hussein, the UN Industrial Development Organization. As far as I know, you had the Technology Transfer Office. Can you please tell us how artificial intelligence could help enhance financial inclusion and SMEs access to, let's say, finance in general? I don't know, I mean, if you could provide us some color on this issue, please.
If you allow me, Mr. Chairman, I will provide you more than that. As a practitioner in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation over the last 25 years, I worked and developed a very well-known program called the EDIP, Enterprise Development and Investment Promotion, which today we're implementing it in more than 56 countries. In Turkey, we're implementing it with GOSCEP. Even we have worked in restructuring and reform of GOSCEP in the last 3 years to be better enhanced for financial inclusions for entrepreneurs. From a UN point of view, when we talk about financial inclusion, as you know, in the SDG 2030, people is the center of our sustainable development goals. If I take from an economic empowerment point of view, how to reach prosperity and how to reach a better planet and with peace, it means we have to look into the economic empowerment of people. Today we're realizing that the investment gap in the SDGs is about $250 billion every year till the year 2030. Governments cannot bridge that gap. Only the private sector and the financial institutions. And then when we come on how the financial institutions and the private sector will bridge the gap, who will do that? It's small and medium enterprises. Who is the driving force behind micro and small businesses? We call them today entrepreneurs. This is the new vibrant driving economic force of the future. Me as a practitioner, if I will summarize my journey over the last 25 years, I would say now in the last 5 to 7 years, we have a maturity when we come and talk about what we call them financial and non-financial support services. My friend and my colleague Viber said, we don't only have to work with entrepreneurs. Yes, we discovered this 25 years back, that we have to support institutions, financial and non-financial, accelerators, science and technology parks, technology sourcing, technology development, and of course, access to finance. And here, this is where we are in this panel today, talking about financial inclusion. Nowadays, we started, when we look into financial inclusion, and now when we're talking to the banks, and we're talking to the private sector, and we're talking to governments on their reporting for the SDGs, we're telling them to develop a very clear strategy how to support micro and small businesses through what we call financial and non-financial services. If quickly I can resort to your question on the robotics or the industrial intelligence on what we call 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution, or recently now we're calling it the first digital revolution. You know, that is the future of any economy. Also, again, if I come to research and if I come to figures, the World Bank, last year have issued a report that by the year 2030, we're going to lose more than 25 million jobs every year, professionals already into their profession. Those are doctors, engineers, and so on, because all of the equipments, all of the businesses, is going to be 3D printing. So now to move faster through, if we talk about business angels always talks about supporting entrepreneurs, mentoring entrepreneurs, access to finance. So if I want to talk about investment and technology, I think business angels will be in a very good position to start to identify innovative ideas, either startups or already into business, but it is related to the industrial or industrial 4.0. This is, I think, one of the things what we can do, and we can work within the board, because also I'm a board member of the WBAF. It's something we have to look into. If you map it quickly, you have entrepreneurs, you have innovation, you have finance, either crowdfunding or business angel or microfinance. If we bring this together, this will help us to reach and to go forward to the SDGs. Of course, here I have a limited time to speak, but I can share a full-fledged concept, because now we have just finalized a strategy for the MENA region, for financial inclusion, for women, economic empowerment for youth and women. This will be finalized.
We'll probably come back to women issue later on, other than the fact that we have an all-man panel. I think Baybars should fix this next time around. Otherwise, I won't be moderating next year. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you, ministers, for your patience. I wanted industry to, representatives to give a perspective. I hope, it's insightful for you as well. But let me begin with Minister Sapuric. A warm welcome to you. Thank you for being here. Can you please tell us, why should angel investors or investors in general come to Macedonia to invest there? What is your government doing uniquely, in some ways, to attract capital, attract investors? And as far as angel investors are concerned, are you putting in place a framework, or do you already have one? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a good question. In my opinion, personally, the role of the government is to establish a positive business climate and to give regulation and to keep business doing and developing. But I want to mention that one of the things is our necessity and our need and our way, which was stopped for 10 years. We are candidate for membership of EU since 2005, and we are candidate for NATO 1995. And now, as you know, the protocol of NATO is signed. We expect that the full member of Macedonia membership will be this year, finish the process, which is very important for business to be. And also we are expecting to start negotiation with the EU and to be part of the more than 500 million market. Probably in few years also we will be fully member. It's very important. It's one hand. In the last 10 years, we have a lot of subsidies, incentives for foreign investors, which is, in one hand, opposite to what we are talking, let to business do, but at the first time.
Are subsidies working?
Yeah, they're working. Also, the countries in the region, Bulgaria, before coming the EU, Slovakia, Czechia, Poland, but now Bulgaria, still Romania, Serbia, Bosnia, Albania, Kosovo, they have also subsidies for the, or incentives for the foreign investment. So we have some kind of race. But what is very important that we start also subsidies for domestic investors, because, okay, we are interested for multinational companies, international, but we have to have our own production. On one hand. In another hand, I'll come just 2 seconds coming back to the business angel investors. We have a lot of, competitions about this, and we want to support, but to be not place for like in the last 7, 8 years, only place for investors for cheap labor force. There is no sense because a lot of people from Macedonia, but the region, Kosovo, Albania, they're moving to the most developed country, and so the interest will be develop high technologies, investors, and of course, not only for cheap. Relating to the business angel investors, we are considering the regulation. Mr. Baibas visited a few times Macedonia, signed a memorandum with our the biggest state university, Syrios and Methodist, and visit our government, has 2 meetings with our prime minister, and we have a series of, also we consider the Croatian experience, UK, and the first completely business angel regulation is in Turkey, and we hope we'll have opportunity to have translate and as a base. There is some part in Estonia. Unfortunately, Estonia representatives are not here, and UK is good experience, but generally speaking, in the EU we have no regulation. In Zagreb, a few months ago, from the officials from the EU commissions, we understand that EU start to preparing for a regulation on the EU level. Maybe some, yes, that's the EU, maybe some over-regulated, but there will be some directives, and there will be a soft kind, according my knowledge from these months, to allow to the countries, the EU, to choose the way, separate law or changing. But however, one thing is separate, we have to, it is very, very new things. Even we have experience with some business angel networks 10 years, but they are only 50, 100,000 per year. It's very, very low. You have to have encouragement. The role of the government is to encourage, and also the, I don't know, maybe some kind of license and other things, but experience, positive of course, but also consider the negative experience, and we have to be aware that there is still fear for this kind of investments, especially in the country, in the regions, and the experience will be so that we'll try instead of, business, private sector, business sector, most clever than the government. Government gives subsidies in the companies, but of course, the budget money, I think that the business investors are much more careful, even in the government, after many, many experience for a former period, to invest, to help, to support only successful companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Let me turn to His Excellency Besim Bagash. He is the Minister of Innovation and Entrepreneurship from Kosovo. Now, a similar question to you. What is Kosovo doing in a unique way to support entrepreneurship ecosystem? I know there is nothing unknown in this field, but because it's a relatively small country with very strong and good prospects, but to lure capital, to obviously unlock domestic investment potential, but also to attract global angel investors, people like Peter or others. What are you working on? What are you doing? And what makes you different than, let's say, other countries in the region?
Thank you very much. In our government, we are trying to make a case that the economy should be transformed totally. How this transformation should be is from looking into the very traditional economic development, which was a kind of socialist-oriented economies with a very heavy focus on the natural resources, into something else, into the resource which we have, we do believe, very, very good resource, and that is human resource. So that's the way that we have been establishing this ministry to make the economic vision and the economic paradigm toward the digital economy, toward using the youth and the services in the IT sector and the digital economy to keep the people inside the country and working for the international companies. So this is the vision that we are putting together, and that's why today in the morning we had Speaker of the Parliament who is supporting our ministry as a political orientation to change this attitude, this culture. This is not easy. This is a very hard thing to do. Why I took this position, I'm coming with a background from entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I have as well the science side. Being representative of the business community for about 6 years, I was president of Chamber of Commerce, I saw that there is a mismatching between governmental officials and the business community. When I was Minister of Finance, when I was asking my people, what do you need government to do, the reasonable answer would be, do not put obstacles. Let us to be developed. Let us to make things by ourselves. So in this sense...
So we're talking about not only a to-do list, but
yes.
not to-do list.
Exactly.
That's great.
So it's the government should not try to play the role of the business itself, which is a very big, tiny distinction we are speaking about it these days. And being with the spirit of entrepreneur and serving in the government and the parliament for about 10 to 15 years in different positions, back and forth, I'm trying to build this culture, and I'm trying to do that with the regulations. So what we are doing now for innovation and financial incentives and inclusiveness is that these days we are finalizing the strategy, national strategy for innovation and entrepreneurship with the support of the German government, which will be translated into the law for innovation and entrepreneurship. And by the law, we are aiming to put three things in order. So physical infrastructure, which means we are enabler of all those people who have good ideas to put those ideas together and to have the place where they can go and exercise their ideas and even fail, because we have learned that failure is a part of the entrepreneurship, and not at the cost, at their personal cost, but at the cost of the government. The other thing is financial support. We have created a fund for innovation in the country, but the fund which is not financing 100% of the companies. We wanted the companies to participate to a certain extent, maybe 10 to 20% of the investment, just to feel it, because as an entrepreneur, I do believe that when the money is easy money and the cheap money, it can be misused, even by the business community. So we wanted to feel that kind of sense, and in this sense, we are matching funds. We succeeded to match funds with GIZ from Germany. So we put 1.2 million euros, they put 1.2 million euros together, and we are supporting enabling activities which are making our companies to be competitive in the economy, not giving money directly to them. With the fund, we are creating possibilities to fund some ideas for innovation, startups, some SME sector, again with the matching funds. We are these days working with Austrian Development Agency, with the World Bank, with LuxDev, and with other institutions in order to make sure that they are part of it. And the other thing is, as I mentioned, regulatory, is legal thing that with the law on innovation, we are trying to regulate startups, financing crowd financing, as well regulating the business angels itself, because we do need the healthy business angels in the sector, because normally this is not always the best way to go with this. With the physical infrastructure, we are creating innovative centers. We are transforming these days the military camp. Military camp was a German military camp since after the war. This year is 20 years. And as of January is serving as an innovation and training camp. Kosovo German Innovation and Training Camp. What we want to achieve with this is that we want to have the German experience, the German tradition, and it's going to be led for the next 3 to 5 years by the German government. So it's a joint exercise. The founders of the camp is German government and Kosovo government. So these are things that we are trying to make sure, because at the end of the day, the banking sector is functioning really well in Kosovo. We have very stable banking sector, and the economy is performing well. In the last 10 years, it's more than 5% economic growth, but we are seeing this underfinanced and marginalized part. And with the World Bank here, since we are having the World Bank here, we are about to start a new project tackling unfinanced and marginalized part of the society, which means rural and the women in business. So these are some actions that we are taking.
Thank you. Finally, in this round, thank you, Minister Awal. He's the Business Development Minister from Ghana. Africa is a continent with a great potential, extremely favorable demographics. Population looks set to double almost from about roughly 1.2, 1.3 billion today to about 2.5 billion people by 2050 and about 4.5 billion people by the end of this century. This is great, but we need to clearly accelerate development. And that requires capital beyond what that exists in Africa. Talent, infrastructure. Now, I know Ghana in recent years has been a great success story. I would like to congratulate you. What is Ghana doing to differentiate itself for the, in terms of, other countries, relative to other countries? What are you doing to attract investments, to, again, mobilize domestic talent, entrepreneurship, ecosystem? And congratulations for setting up the first office in terms of, angel investors. What do you expect?
Thank you. Ghana has always been the lead in Africa. If you recall, Ghana was the first country to gain independence from the British colonial rule. So in Ghana, we want to encourage intra-African trade. It's one of the biggest things that we want to do. As you said, Africa is now the next frontier after Asia. Ghana, what we're doing is to stabilize the macroeconomic environment. It's the most important thing for every business. So we're formalizing the economy, making sure that digitalization plays a very important role. Ghana is also leading the space in the African continental trade area. Africa today is 1.2 billion, and like I said, we'll grow beyond 3 billion, 2 billion very soon. And the money there is over $4 trillion per annum in terms of trade. Current trade among African countries is just about 15%. So what Ghana is doing is to build the infrastructure. We are building railway lines between Ghana and other countries in Africa, improving our airport infrastructure. If you come to Accra now, one of the most modernized airport infrastructure is in Ghana. We're doing all this to make sure that trade among African countries is enhanced. That's the only way to reduce poverty and to improve access to finance for businesses. It's very important for us. But the global discussion that I want us to have is that supporting SMEs or entrepreneurs, angel investors, takes form of equity and grants. But we have rudimentary problems, serious challenges as to how to raise the money. The public purse is very limited. How then do you get the money? to support angel investors, support entrepreneurs. But there's demand social services like health, like education, like women entrepreneurs. Yet our primary products, the prices are very low. We are one of the biggest exporters of cocoa, oil, gold, but the prices are very low. The conversation I want us to have is that how do we encourage FDI flows from the rich north to African countries so that we can have easy access to financing? That's a very challenge I want to throw to my panelists here. How do we make access to finance good? By improving FDI flows from the north to the south, so that women, who are about 54% of the African continent, can have access to cheap capital, so to speak. Thank you.
I think that's a great question. Let me go back to Matt. Matt, would you like to respond to Minister's question? You were listening very carefully.
Yes, so I think the Minister raised a number of really important points that we need to probe into more deeply. And the most important one of all, and it gets back to a previous question you asked our colleague from UNIDO, is about what's going on with digitalization and artificial intelligence, and what does that have to do with angel investing? The world is becoming more and more digital. And let me be a 62-year-old young grumpy old man and say, in addition to not having any women on this panel, the farthest east anybody's headquarters is on this panel is in the Middle East. We left out the most important part of the world in terms of what I'm about to talk about, which is how you can transform to an e-commerce-led, digital-led, artificial intelligence-based approach to opening up not just access to finance, but the even more important access to markets for our small businesses around the world. And the biggest difference between if I was talking about government enabling environment and things 10 years ago and today is we didn't even know what e-commerce was 10 years ago. And it's about what can governments do and how can the private sector respond to make the situation right for e-commerce. And this gets into an area that there are great differences of political opinion in the world about, which is how do we take all this data without which we cannot link. I don't care how good our airports are, how good our ships are, how good our roads are. We can't link many of the people who are outside of markets unless we can also link the information in real time. But in doing that, how do we protect the rights of those whose information it is and their right to privacy? And this is a balance that we are struggling with right now. And it's fair to say that the attitude of the richer countries, it tends to be more toward privacy protection, and the attitude of the poorer countries tends to be more about let's get that data out there because we have more poor people, we have more excluded people, and on balance this is good. And we have to figure out how to deal with this world. Because you look at what's happening in, say, the Taobao villages in China, where you've had not just Alibaba, but JD Finance, DHgate, many of the other platforms have been helped by the government to create the e-commerce infrastructure in these places, not only so their people can sell into wider markets, but also so they can buy from wider markets. And the early results seem to show that this is a game changer. It's helping people move back from where they had to migrate away from their children, away from their families to the eastern cities to have a decent chance of having a good livelihood in rural areas. And that, you know, I mean, it's still early days. I don't want to oversell this, but certainly in the World Bank Group, I think this is one of the biggest challenges for us, how we wrap our minds around these good experiences and how we can help share them with other countries. And then from an angel point of view, yes, of course, what's critical in an angel is that you're bringing your mentorship to the firm, but even business angels would love to not have to physically check on that firm all the time to know what's going on. So the more you can use that digital technology as an angel to be able to have that real-time knowledge of your mentees, if you will, and not have to get in your car, get on your bicycle, whatever, and check on them, then the more you can take on, and the more you can share in your networks, and the more you can share even with, on the other end, which we haven't talked about, the capital markets, where, you know, if I can show all this data and I can share it to me, I can then share it up to where the big capital is in the world.
Thank you, Matt. I mean, you look young, but you're not grumpy. So, thank you. Normally, we're about to run out of time, but I believe we started pretty late. So I wonder whether we could have one, you know, full hour and 10 minutes. Is that okay? Since the host is here, I guess we can get away with it. I know there's very limited time, and I do want to get audience involved at some point, but just a few more minutes. Let me, this is the second round. Peter, a quick question, please. What's your typical rate of return expectations? And would you really recommend somebody like me to become an angel investor?
Yeah, a very good question. So the typical rate of return, so analysis has been done on that, both in the States and the UK and probably other countries, and it is said that providing one selects carefully, however one does that, long story that one invests more capital where required when one can, one waits, then, and one has an element of luck. I'm going to have a plug for my book here, and one of the things on here, for the angel has to have luck, so the investor, and one has a big enough portfolio, very important, I won't define that today, then one can get 20 to 25% return per year. Bearing in mind most interest rates in Europe, not here in Turkey, are around about the 1% return, you're getting a very good return for that. The time frame, though, can be many years. It's not a 3-year journey, a 5-year journey, unless you're very lucky. It's a 10-year, 12-year journey. The value takes a long time to create, the big value. This is the 30Xs and the 20Xs. That's 20 times your money back. So in terms of the return, at the moment, I've been doing it 10 years. I invest in deep tech, takes a very long time. I've had 5 successes, 9 failures. I've got 54 still alive. I have not got my money back yet. However, and those people who know me well know that I do this because I really, really enjoy it. I enjoy interacting with the entrepreneurs. I feel a bit millennial at times, despite my 63 years rather than 62 years. I really enjoy that. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that everybody needs to enjoy it a lot, but it helps. It helps because you're getting a soft benefit from investing. You're not just doing it for hard reasons. If you do it purely for financial return, I strongly recommend you don't do it because the risk is so high. You will need to get up to, you know, a minimum of 25 investments really to have a reasonable chance of return. If you've got less than that, you've got to enjoy what you do. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. That was great. Abdul, I know you're all the way down there. Let me ask you a simple question. Very briefly, please. How risky is angel investing?
Well, it's very risky. 2 fronts. The first front, your wife is always angry because you are risking a lot of money, and that's why actually my wife is the decision maker for making angel investment before I decide. So she decides first. If she says yes, then I say yes. If she says no, then it's not going to happen. That's why I stay safe at home. It is very risky because you are entering in the Middle East at a very early stage. The ecosystem is not there. There are no track records of very successful exits, so that even makes it more difficult. But as Peter mentioned, if you don't really enjoy it, don't do it. And you have to be patient. Plus, you have to have a magic stick to open many doors. Because if you don't have that magic stick to open doors for these startups, it's going to be extremely, extremely dangerous. So patience, supportive wife, magic stick, I think these are the 3 secrets that I use to stay in this business.
Baybars, again, very briefly, please. typical source of angel investors in places like Turkey, for example? Are they wealthy people? Are they family, friends? I mean, where do you actually, I mean, if there are companies here, I mean, I know you have a network, but typically, where does it start in the early stage?
For Turkey, 6 years ago, Turkey was at the 32nd row in the European angel investment picture. But after you brought angel law, last year, Turkey came to 5th row with 512 million euro investment. It was a very fast development in 6 years. And this law, of course, empowered this startup economy very much. And around 500 angel investors now have been accredited after this law by the Treasury Department of Turkey. And most of these accredited angel investors are entrepreneurs who produced their own wealth by themselves. This is the profile. As a matter of fact, if you are not coming from entrepreneurial background, it is almost not so easy immediately to become an angel investor. You can easily become an investor, but not an angel investor, because you should have know-how to transfer to startup, because startup has this expectation. But startup has also different expectations from angel investors too. So, do you allow me to ask a question to Ms. Ministers? One question, but no, I'm not expecting an answer, by the way. Just a brainstorming question.
Please do ask the question, but we have
that. The question is a simple question. Peter was awarded 2 years in UK as the best angel investor of UK. Now, we have a startup. He is, let's say, from Macedonia or Kosovo or Ghana. This startup's company valuation is 100K. Business model is same. Entrepreneur is always with same skills, and another entrepreneur in London has the same company valuation, 100K, with same skills, with same background, and with same business model. Why Peter is going to invest in an entrepreneur in Macedonia, Kosovo, or Ghana, but not in an entrepreneur in London?
Okay, well, we'll pose that question if we had more time, if
Yes.
the panel was a little bit smaller, but before I come back to ministers, maybe to even answer your question, Mr. Hussein, if you were looking, down from 30,000 foot, what's new in SME financing? I mean, what would you recommend government representatives, policymakers, I mean, what to do beyond what they're already doing?
Thank you for this question, yes. Well, if I address to our honorable ministers here, it's very interesting now when you see governments, ministers, they started to, well, earlier I talked about the SDG and what's happening on the investing on the SDGs, but nowadays we see governments either in the industrialized countries or developing countries, they're developing strategies, and they're so eager to support all what we call innovation and entrepreneurship. And what I have seen from the two honorable ministers here, when it comes to financial inclusion, which is the theme of this panel, financial inclusion, if we would like to translate it well, what does it mean? It means how we prepare entrepreneurs to be qualified for finance. Okay? To do that, there is a lot to be done. Of course, if you're talking about business angel, because this is a form of a business angel, it is one of the tools or the mechanisms to access to finance. But to reach that stage, there is a lot to be done. You need to develop the infrastructure in terms of accelerators, business incubators, science and technology park, education at the school level, at the university level, to boost innovation and entrepreneurship, link between R&Ds and commercialization of the private sector.
Long list of recommendations.
Yes, no, not recommendations. No, I'm talking how I'm reaching, because this is, Your Excellency, this is the theme of the panel, financial inclusion. So I try to bring it to the audience. What do you mean by financial inclusion? Fine. So you're talking about what's happening new in terms of access to finance for SMEs. I would say in the last 7 to 10 years now, because we have been relying in the past talking only to banks, I mean institutionalized financial institutions, trying to get access to finance through the banks. Nowadays, we're having community finance. Community finance is coming from crowd financing. It's coming from business angels, you know, which I don't need to have a bank to do that. And this is moving quite well with the maturity in the ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is why what we see on business angel, it is growing very fast, and it's growing on at different levels, you know. So even yesterday we have been talking about, I don't need to have a legal framework to do a business angel. I don't need to have a law to do that, you know. So the different kind of finance platform now is available. You have microfinance, you have crowdfund, you have business angel. Now we're developing a new term of what we call it Islamic business angel, but this is something we can explain and we can talk about it later. What does this mean, you know? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me turn to audience to pose questions to ministers. And I'll, of course, any women angel investors? Anyone who would like to? Please. Is there a microphone?
You know, I have to say I'm just tremendously impressed by the engagement of our ministers here. And I would really like to really just congratulate you. You know, so many times in life, people forget to celebrate the good things. And I think the president of Croatia, where indeed we have been fortunate as IBAN to have been with her many times, that's what she talked about today, you know, is celebrating. So yes, there are difficult things to do, but you're all, particularly the ministers, but I also have to say my wonderful colleagues here, angel investors, it's the most difficult thing in the world to make investments in the next generation and to hope that they will succeed. And indeed, the financial inclusion, you know, recently I just started a program in Kenya where women were being taught to weave, and I said, damn it, you know, we need to give them computers so that they can learn how to program. And so indeed, that's what we've done. So, but really just congratulations to these policymakers who are making great policies for financial inclusion and for angel investing and for entrepreneurship in the next generation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Please. Feel free to ask questions, because I left questions to ministers in the last round to the audience, and in particular, women angel investors.
Thank you, sir. I'm reliving Baba's question to Peter Cowley, where he said, if he has an entrepreneur or a startup in London, where he's required to invest. And there is one in Tanzania where has the same qualities, the same financial strength and such. But why would Peter invest still in London but not in Tanzania?
Peter, why not invest in Tanzania when you have a much better incentives to do so?
Yeah, a very good question, and something that EBAN is working on strongly, not within the whole world, but within Europe, because we have exactly the same issue here. So just 2 data points. One, I started angel investing about 11 years ago. It took me about 3 or 4 years to realize I shouldn't invest in technology or markets, I should invest in people. It's the people that matter. And then it was about 3 or 4 years ago, so another 4 years further on, I realized how strongly that it's all to do with trust. So it's me trusting the check I give to, say you're an entrepreneur, give to you as the entrepreneur, and that you will use that money prudently, wisely, and grow with it. Learn from it, but also return it to me with a multiple of some form to reflect the risk I'm taking in backing you. Building up trust still, and this shows my grey hair to some extent, still requires a physical presence, being in the same place. Certainly when investigating whether I'm going to give the check to you, and very importantly, you're going to take the check from me, because I might misbehave. We are bond together, and I often say on stage, closer than a marriage. Once I've given you the money, we can't separate that. One can get divorced, you can't separate that. So that's before investment, and after investment, if I'm not a passive investor, I would like to be able to help you. It's much easier to help you, again, if there's physical presence. Now, of course, this is a big problem within Europe, as anywhere else, because the capital's in the wrong places. You know, whether it's Croatia or Kosovo or whatever, or wherever you're from, it's difficult to do that. So what we're doing in EBAN, and what's done generally in the world of angel investing, is that the angels get to know each other, and then you invest through another angel. So we do a lot of these events with EBAN, so we're putting angels together from different places. It's particularly strong, the CEE program, which Candice is helping run, etc., in this area of Europe, or north of here. And so then I would invest through an angel who then invests on and act as my eyes and ears. So in the end, until we get to the point where, hopefully long after I'm dead, I'll stop in a moment, where human trust can be built up remotely, then we do need this connection. Now, crowdfunding does change that. There's a level of crowdfunding, but I still strongly believe that I need to get to know the entrepreneur and then me before I write the check.
Peter, thank you. Matt, I know you want to step in.
I only want to say that this is because the question came from an emerging market. And I want to point to a particular strength of emerging markets that's actually less true of Europe. You have hundreds of billions of dollars coming into emerging markets in remittances from your diaspora. And the separation of your expatriate Tanzanians with the community in Tanzania is much less than the separation of me in the UK from somebody in Macedonia, because I don't come from Macedonia. And this is a tremendous opportunity, because our digital transformation is enabling us to, before that money just went point to point and it came out in cash. Now you can organize, and you can take your angel networks, and you can take those Tanzanians on the ground who can be the mentors and link them to the high net worth Tanzanians, not just in Tanzania, but all around Europe, North America, Asia, wherever they are. And this is a tremendous time where actually the emerging markets have an advantage, because you have this large diaspora with strong ties that could build this quicker in many ways that we can build across European countries that don't have that.
Thank you. I'll give the last word to our ministers. Would you like to say something about promoting individually your countries? I'll start with Ghana. I mean, clearly there are lots of investors here. What's your message? And then I'll move to Kosovo, and then finally Macedonia.
Thank you. I really want to encourage investors to look at Ghana. Ghana is politically stable, very focused leadership. Your investments are safe, secure, with high returns on investment. Please come to Ghana. It's just 6 hours away from here. And I can assure you that your investment's safe and secure. Thank you.
That was a great 30-second pitch. Now, we want equally good messages.
Thank you very much. I'm going to speak over the lunch, so I will skip this part. Thank you.
You're so kind. I think
Just one sentence, please. You can invest in Macedonia because we are political stability, we have financial stability, currency stability, and we are going very fast now after 10 years again to the NATO and EU integration. Thank you.
Thank you all for the very interesting discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, may I also thank you very much for sticking with the panel. You know, you had the choice. You could have walked out, but it means hopefully it was exciting and informative. So thank you for being here, and I hope you all enjoyed and have a safe trip back to all those who were visiting Istanbul. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, dear ministers, now we are going, and dear guests, we are now going to make the traditional bell ceremony of the World Congress 2019, and then we will go to our lunch. Okay.
So, gentlemen, if you pick up your hammers, you're going to need them for the bell ceremony.